Hello, and welcome to the Sovereign Collective podcast, where we bring you real, raw truth for your self-empowerment. I'm your host, Fascia, and I believe that you can stand on your own 2 feet, but that you don't have to do it alone. I love learning from people who continually strive to raise the bar, to go against mainstream thinking, and who dare to question the general consensus. People who risk being ridiculed or even risk the loss of their professional status as they bravely question the common narratives and challenge the rest of us to expand our minds and to reconsider what we think we already know. Join me in learning how to take control of your health and your mind so that you can have the energy to think more clearly and the confidence to step up and take responsibility for all aspects of your life. We promise to never censor here because I believe you are strong enough to hear the real, raw truth to make up your own mind. If you like what you find here at the Sovereign Collective podcast, then please share with your friends and family. I so appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. And now, on to the show. Welcome to episode 109 of the Sovereign Collective podcast. Today I have a conversation with Deanna Hansen of Block Therapy. And I just found out the very day after interviewing Deanna that there is a time-sensitive offer that you might want to take advantage of. So I got this interview out as soon as possible. Deanna Hansen is all about releasing the fascia and talking about good posture and how we can literally remodel our bodies, release our emotions, release our tensions in the body through blocking. So the difference with Deanna's approach compared to Anna Ray, for example, who I interviewed a couple of times, is Anna Ray's method is based in movement. Deanna Hansen's is based in pressure over time with the wood element. And the offer that she has is in her starter pack, which includes one of her beautiful blocks. Her blocks are beautiful. They're made from reclaimed elm that have been taken down in Winnipeg due to Dutch elm disease, but the disease is only in the bark. So she uses the beautiful wood to make these amazing blocks and paddle that I'll show you on the interview. And if you watch it on YouTube or BitChute, and she will show it as well, the 2 blocks that she has. And so the starter pack is $197. And as of June 10th, it's going to be $297. And that includes some lessons as to how to apply the block and the block itself. So if you listen to this interview and you're interested in taking advantage of the current pricing, then I encourage you to go down to the show notes, click on the link and get to her site and buy that sooner than later, the starter pack. So that's the Block Buddy and the intro to Fascia Foundation's intro. We also have 2 special offerings for you for free in the show notes. So one is information series on the feet and the other one is an intro to block therapy. But you can use that without a block for now. Just use a towel. And if you feel that you are interested in pursuing it further with the block, then you can purchase your block. But you can have an intro and see the benefits for free using a rolled up towel. So I hope you enjoy this interview. I am really obsessed with learning as much as I can about fascia and releasing the fascia in my body, because to really have peak health in body and mind, fascia cannot be ignored because it is the physical representation of the body-mind connection in which our traumas and our emotions and our bad habits and our bad postures are stored that become more binding over time. So listen to this interview on Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, watch it on YouTube and BitChute, share it all around. Go to sovereigncollective.org to sign up for my email list so that you can get notified when these interviews are released, because you never know when the show is going to disappear off of a platform here and there. You can also find me on Instagram at Sascha K Says, SASCHAK Says. That is also down in the show notes. And I also announce interview releases on that platform. Enjoy the show. Thank you for listening, and I so appreciate you. Hey everyone, welcome to another interview of the Sovereign Collective podcast. This is Sascha, and I am talking today with Deanna Hansen, a fellow Canadian who is out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. And we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics again, fascia. So I've talked to Anna Ray a couple times, and she's all about the movement. I recently spoke with Janet Danielson. She's talking about the cooch ball and the pelvic floor. And we're going to talk to Deanna about her own very cool, amazing method called block therapy. She's the founder of Fluid Isometrics and Block Therapy. And she came to the development of what she does very honestly for her own need to heal and exploring of her own body
and the bodies of others because she was already a body worker at that time. And she really is great at explaining how the fascia spirals and adheres. And it really, in my interpretation, like it limits not only physical mobility, but it's affecting us body and mind. That's the amazing thing about the fascia, is that it really is the 3D representation of body and mind connection. And so Deanna's approach is pressure over time to release the adhesions, to bring back space, glowingness, beauty, mood, function, everything. And so I'm really excited to get into this interview. I have been following Deanna for a couple of years. I've been ever since I got into really exploring, once I understood how important fascia is to everybody. And that's what I love about fascia. It's a fundamental basic for all. We all have it. We all need to release it. We all need to have healthy fascia for a healthy body and mind. And so Deanna was right there when I was starting to research people and information on that. So she's been at this for a while, and through her years, she's gained a lot of wisdom and can help us understand why this is so important. Give us some amazing tools. I'm in her doing her 21-day facelift program. I didn't quite make it before this interview, but I'm using my special tool that we're going to talk about to release adhesions in my face, but not only my face, my body. So thank you so much, Deanna. You can tell I'm a little bit excited. I get excited about topics like this because it's a fundamental basic. We all need to address this, or we would all do well to address this to really achieve the life we're seeking. So thank you for your time today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and have this wonderful conversation with you.
Thank you. So let's talk, because we've got to be tight with time today. We've got to get into it all. Let's talk about how you came to it. Because one time, sometimes I'm really curious, and people say, well, yes, I can't believe what this is doing for me, this and that. But I'm really curious, what is it doing for people? And tell us about how you got to where you are, because you came from a once athletic, nimble body to change when you say you hit puberty, and that led to many years of a downward spiral. And so how did you get to what you're doing today?
Great question. So it really starts, I would say, more so in my 20s. In my 20s, I was really struggling with anxiety, chronic pain, depression. I was 50 pounds overweight. The harder I was working, the more compressed and ballooned and toxic I became. And at the time, I was going through university to become an athletic therapist. So for those that are in the US, it would be like physiotherapists, but we're trained to work with elite athletes. So I'm working with these athletes and I'm doing the work. Like I'm running, I'm lifting weights, I'm doing aerobics, Tae Bo. I mean, you name it, I'm doing it 400 sit-ups a day. And literally, I continued to compress and became bloated and constipated and depressed as a result of working so hard to try to create a result that only took me in the opposite direction. So when I was 30 years old, I made some big changes in my life. One of the major things that happened as a result of those changes, though, was I started having really severe panic attacks. And it was this one attack in particular that really is the foundation of everything that I have built my whole world around. In the moment, I actually thought I was going to die. I was literally compressed, frozen in fear, couldn't catch my breath. And for some reason, I dove my hand into my belly. Now, this was where I stored the majority of my size. So I hated this area of my body. I was ashamed of it. I never touched it, let alone let anyone else. So now here I am diving my hand into my tissue. Now, prior to that, though, as an athletic therapist, I always focused on deep tissue work on clients. And I was really good at finding scar tissue in other bodies, working on backs and necks and legs like we were trained, but never did I ever work in somebody else's abdomen. And now here I am in my own. And as I start connecting in, the first thing I encountered was pain. But the great thing about that was it brought me into my body. So I was, out of my crazy mind, and I'm now in my body, and I'm like, okay, I'm breathing, I'm alive. So I just started intuitively exploring. And what was so fascinating was that it felt marbled with scar tissue, even though I hadn't had any injury or surgery in that area. And then suddenly all these realizations came to me. Most importantly, no wonder when I'm coming home from a 5-mile run and I'm dripping wet with sweat, my belly would still feel cold. So I started to recognize that no matter what I was doing, I wasn't getting any blood flow to metabolize this tissue. So for the first day, I spent maybe 30, 45 minutes working. And what was so notable for me was how calm I felt, which was not my normal. I woke up the next day a little tender from the work, but I still felt connected to my body and I felt grounded. So excited to go back home that night and continue the exploration. And after the second day of doing a similar thing, I stood up and I felt taller. And I went and I looked at myself in the mirror and I became emotional because my belly was flatter than it had looked in years, like years,
In 2 days.
years of diet in 2 days, years of dieting, years of exercising. And now it's flatter. So this became my new practice. I would come home every day after working on patients. I would work on my own body. And within 2 weeks, my chronic low back pain was improving. My neck pain was going away. But most importantly, I was actually hopeful about life. I felt like finally I had some sense of control over this container, where prior to that, for all the efforts I was putting in, I felt completely out of control. So this was really the basis of the foundation of everything that I've built with understanding fascia. It was probably a couple of years in when I really recognized I'm working in this tissue called fascia. So now I'm 26 years into this, and I have a very deep understanding of this tissue as I've spent over 60,000 hours working in other people's tissue as well as my own.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. And so body and mind, what is different about your body now compared to, like, I feel like there's a remodeling going on. Like, how, I don't know.
I have a before picture if you'd like to see it now.
Oh,
because it really speaks volumes.
Okay. Okay, guys, if you're not on video, you might want to head over to YouTube or BitChute to see the before and after picture, because I think
okay. So let's talk about this before picture.
Okay.
So the before picture was me in my 20s, again, working out, working hard. I was very dense. I was thick. I had pain. It was like I was slumbering around, dragging this dense, heavy body. And I just, didn't like myself. The after picture, 50 years old. I'm 57 in 2 weeks, actually.
Yeah.
So, but 50 years old in that picture. And I mean, it's night and day. Most people see this and they don't even recognize that that was me.
Yeah.
Because I've really restructured everything in my body. And really what this work is about, it's about bringing the cells to correct alignment, because if they're aligned properly, what we have is optimal space in and around every cell. So I'm just going to stop sharing here so I can explain, because I think this is a great opportunity to kind of dive in and really teach people what fascia is, because there's a lot of information out there. But if we really get down to it, it's literally the cell membrane of every cell connected to every other cell. It innervates bone, muscle, ligament, fat cells, nerve fibers, blood vessels, organ tissue. Absolutely everything has fascia as a component. And there's many things that make up fascia, but two primary proteins: collagen, which we all hear about because people are taking all these supplements, and elastin. So when these are in balance, what we have is space in and around every cell because we have proper cell alignment. But the reality is we are under this constant force of gravity. And I've created a protocol called TIP, Trauma Induces Programming and Patterning. So what happens with trauma, and birth is a trauma, and then everything else in life, it doesn't have to be some big catastrophic event. It could be like, the sibling that bullies you, or the little shots that people take at you, or listening to the news. It's all traumatic. What happens to our body with trauma is we reactively hold the breath because we go into this protection mode. The deer who survives the attack will shake, moving that negative energy out of the body. We hold and we age from that perspective. So as soon as that happens and we pull in, now the core becomes twisted. So one thing that happens, if we don't release that, now we're stuck in that mindset as well. So if we had just been abused and now we're the victim, we see the world from the lens of the victim unless we can release that. But also what happens with the fascia is, in order to stay upright, we end up adjusting our limbs to not tip over. And so it's the collagen, that structural protein, that will migrate to areas of need as we start to fall off balance, like scaffolding in a building. So it continues to migrate and build, and it becomes denser, and then it blocks blood and oxygen flow to cells on the other side and keeps areas stagnant, which means ripe for, I don't even like using the word disease. I say dis-ease, because disease is a permanent mindset, where dis-ease, we can take the dis out and put the ease back. And that's what this work is really about. So the goal is that, again, we bring these areas of density, these collagen proteins that have migrated and will grip to everything in their pathway, including bone, with a force of up to 2,000 pounds per square inch, holding us out of alignment. It's a magnetic seal. So my work is fascia decompression. So basically, we get older, we compress, we become shorter and wider. I take you in the opposite direction. We put the space back into the body that time has taken away so that we can resume the flow. We can move out the toxins that have accumulated and all of the parasites and the fungus and bacteria and all the things that have infiltrated our body. And we can support the cells being properly fed and clean with oxygen, which is the most important vital nutrient that every cell requires to thrive. So there's 3 parts to the work that I do. One part, the first one is creating space. So we put the space back into the body that time has taken away through the process, which I can go into in a moment. The second part is inflating that space through teaching people proper diaphragmatic breathing. So once we open up those areas of density, we move blood and oxygen into those new spaces. And then those hungry cells that had been, pushed away and forgotten, they're now hungry. They take the oxygen and they start plumping up. Like a balloon fully blown up almost defies gravity. It glows. Take half the air out of the balloon, it becomes wrinkled, dirt and debris gets stuck in the creases, and it gets heavy. So if we're not breathing optimally lifelong, that's what happens to our cells. And I mean, we can see that in aging, like the skin. It starts to get wrinkly, and then we don't have the same clear, vibrant skin as when we're younger. So the third pillar is teaching people how to understand proper postural foundations so we don't simply go back into the negative patterns that were created from trauma. So it's a 3-part approach to really restoring optimal space in the body to restore optimal flow.
Right. And I love this because, well, first of all, I love that balloon analogy. Like, just think of a nice, shiny, full balloon and one that's just kind of lost its shine. And I get that. But it's such an amazing exploration of self, right? It really creates an intimate relationship with yourself. Like, you and your anxiety dropping by you getting into your gut. How many people know that? And in modern life where we're breathing up here, like, it's I love that. Like, now I did have a rib release a few months ago. It was an experience. We're going to have to talk about the pain before ease sometimes, but it's amazing how far I can get my hands under my rib cage now. Like, last night I was in bed. I was like, right up to my second knuckles. Like, it's just there's so much room in there, and it's so amazing. And then you have so much ease in your body, and then just ease in your mind. So, okay, so maybe you want to take this, or should we start with the diaphragm? Because you really focus on diaphragm, proper breathing, out breath versus in breath. So, and even I remember, I haven't seen you say it for a while, but even just lifting out of the center area can do so much. Remember, like, because we're so collapsed in this area. So should we talk about that?
Yeah, so I'm just going to put my camera down just so I can show people where the diaphragm is and what it's supposed to do, and then what most people are stuck in. So our diaphragm is the plate of muscle that supports the rib cage. When we inhale, it moves down. When we exhale, it lifts. If this muscle is properly working this way, it's giving the organs, the heart, and the lungs a continual mechanical massage, which puts energy into the system. If this muscle is weak because we're not conscious diaphragmatic breathers and we're breathing through the muscles of the upper chest, which is what trauma creates, we fall in, we collapse. And now this diaphragm, like a frozen shoulder, it gets locked. And those adhesions will lock the diaphragm, similarly as everywhere else, with that 2,000 pound per square inch seal. So now I'm breathing up through here, these secondary muscles, and now I've just put all of this pressure into my abdomen, causing an extended belly and a displacement of the organs. So that's partly so important to understand, because when breathing properly, it helps support digestion. It helps support metabolic function. It keeps the liver heated so the fats don't get stuck and clogged, impacting how it functions. It supports the heart muscle, the lungs. Like, this structure is so incredibly important. And when I was in my teen years, one of the things, I was a dancer. And of course, you're told to hold your belly in.
Yes.
Well, if I'm holding my belly in, now I'm forcing this upper chest breath. And not only that, because we think, okay, I'm going to hold the belly in so that it looks smaller, but as we're not now exercising this muscle and it becomes weak, now the weight of everything above comes crashing down. And then I get this extended belly. So how many people after a certain age think, why am I suddenly getting a spare tire even though I haven't changed diet or exercise? It's not about fat. It's about compression and ballooning over time. And then that lack of movement of the diaphragm creates stagnancy in the abdomen and the belly. And then we don't eliminate effectively. So then we end up having an accumulation of feces. And again, we start attracting other things, and then they have waste, and we start expanding because we're toxic. So understanding how to support proper diaphragmatic breathing, we need to look at the entire structure of the body, because again, it's the limbs that will pattern to keep us upright. And because the feet are the furthest from the diaphragm, from the engine, this is where we get locked into those negative patterns. So even if you had a frozen shoulder and you had your shoulder worked on, as soon as you start walking and you get pulled into that negative alignment, that's going to pull everything up the chain out of alignment to continue cycling with what you're dealing with. So instead of transforming through the issue and the pain, people are simply managing it for the most part, because we really have to understand what's causing the pain in the body. And that's where, again, having this really deep understanding of the fascia system and how it innervates literally every single cell of the body, no matter what you're struggling with, the fascia will be at least in part responsible.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why it doesn't make sense to me just going to the chiropractor. Go to the chiropractor, get adjusted, whoop, pops out, in, out, in, out. Well, of course it's going to, with that pressure, holding that and those patterning over time, especially in modern day life with our lack of movement in our postures. Like I'm always thankful to somebody with really bad posture, so they remind me to stand back up straight again, right? Like modern life is really probably wreaking havoc, I would think, on the whole system.
Well, and you can really see it in the youth because they're growing up in front of technology where, I don't know how old you are, but I mean, computers didn't even like register into my world. I was really late in the game, by the way. Like I got my first computer in 2014, but either way, as a
really
teenager,
late.
I know. I was destined to be a Luddite, but then I'm like, oh, if I want to get out of Winnipeg, I better learn how to send an email. So things have changed dramatically since then. But another number of things about the diaphragm that is so interesting to note for people struggling with any kind of anxiety, stress, if we're not feeding our cells oxygen, they're going to give a signal. And this is where pain comes in. Pain is like the baby crying. It's not something to fear. It's something to understand and acknowledge, because your cells are working so hard on your behalf to allow you to thrive. But if you aren't working your physical structure the way it was intended to be driven, and most people were never given instructions on how to do that, we're breathing with this trauma response. So now, breathing through the muscles of the upper chest, we might feed the body a small percentage of the amount of oxygen that is required to thrive. To thrive, your toe and your heart and your brain, they're equally important. To survive, though, your body is going to send the oxygen to the areas necessary for you to survive. And most people are living in just survival mode. And we can feed the body up to 6 times the oxygen breathing diaphragmatically. They've also proven in 2014, there's a TED talk on this, 84% of weight loss comes through proper exhalation. So I was so happy when that came out, because me back in my 20s, when I was working so hard, I'm like, why are the rules of weight loss not applying to me? I'm literally starving myself, working out like a fiend, and I'm getting bigger. And then suddenly I recognized, I'm not breathing. I took a yoga class and I had a wonderful instructor the first time. Every 30, 45 seconds, she'd remind us to breathe. And every single time I'm like, wow, I'm holding my breath. So that became such a foundational understanding for me. So then in 2014, when this information came out, I'm like, there you go. And that was why I wasn't changing in my size and shape. Actually, I was getting more compressed and bigger. But it was because I didn't have that engine working on my behalf to deliver the nutrients to the cells, as well as remove the toxins and debris out of the body through that exhale.
Yeah, I was wondering where, because I've heard you say that several times. Like, that's a very specific number. I wonder where you got that. Okay, so, and you really focus on exhale.
Yeah.
And inhale.
Yeah, for a number of reasons. First of all, if you go to buy a whole new wardrobe, you're not going to shove it in a closet with all your old stuff. You're going to remove something to create space to put something new in. Our body is filled with past toxins, debris, byproducts of functioning, all the things that we're absorbing, whether through food, through drink, through the skin, through the eyes, like we're constantly, like we're like this big sponge. And the exhale is how we move that out of the body. And that's why it's so important for managing size and shape. So most people though, again, if they're breathing up here, they're breathing these little shallow breaths. If we're breathing diaphragmatically, the reason we can feed the body up to 6 times the oxygen is because it's at the base of the lungs where the majority of the oxygen receptor sites reside. So it's the absorption that happens when we pull the air deeply enough into the lungs through that belly breath. And then similarly with that full exhale, we are moving the debris from the foundation out of the body. And they have shown the book Breath by James Nestor. I love that book because he goes into wonderful detail about this. But essentially, we need carbon dioxide in the body because that's the currency for the oxygen to jump from the hemoglobin into the cell. So people doing all this breath work, but they're not focusing on that full exhale. They don't have enough CO2. So you might have oxygen in your bloodstream, but we want it to get into the cell. And in order to do that, we have to have that CO2. And that's where when we focus on exhaling for a longer count than we inhale, that's how we increase the carbon dioxide. It also turns on the vagus nerve. So as soon as you start breathing in that way, the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. Most people are in sympathetic 100% of your day. We should be in parasympathetic 80% of our day. So people are just they're a stressed mess. Even when they're sleeping, they're not really getting into that restful state because their system is on overload. Danger is all around. So we have to teach our body through the breath that we are safe inside, even if we're dealing with external stressors. And I mean, who's not today? Right. We can keep our inner world peaceful through understanding how to breathe, but we have to release those adhesions to bring that muscle back online. And that's where this work is so unique for that purpose.
Absolutely. So can we talk about that? Like, okay, so let's talk about the work, the specialty of your work in releasing those adhesions, because I swear to God, I could block things for the rest of my life and I feel like they're not going to release. So, and it's interesting because the deeper you go, the different things you find, but can you explain to people, what does that mean? How are you blocking? What do you mean release adhesions? Is there an order to it?
There is an order to it. The very first thing I always have people do is work core and rib cage because I want to teach people how to access their diaphragm. As soon as you start turning it on even a little bit, you start absorbing more oxygen and you start cleaning yourself out. So right away you become a better healing machine internally for yourself. Then I always go to the foundation because at the foundation, again, if I've got a migraine, if I'm struggling with a ballooning belly, the feet are always involved. Whenever I'm doing an assessment, I always look at the alignment of the feet first. There's always one foot that acts like a flat tire. So let's say your front right tire is flat. Your steering wheel is going to constantly pull over to that side. And then you have to fight that to keep the car moving straight. So as we start to pattern because of trauma, one side gets pulled away from the body, like that flat tire, and then the other side has to anchor to stop you from tipping over. Now, this is all done unconsciously. It's just done continually over our lifetime. So we end up patterning, and those collagen proteins, again, migrate to areas of need to create the stability so we don't fall. So now we're looking at our foundation. We have certain floors to create proper alignment, just like a building. If your building is built on a foundation that's not solid, everything up the chain is impacted negatively. So the feet become this wonderful structure that is here to propel us and support us. But if we're not conscious of their alignment and how we should be positioned, then everything up the chain struggles. We should have 60% of our body weight on our heels. The average person has 80% on the balls of their feet. And that's even before putting a shoe on that might have a high heel. And the toes end up getting twisted and turned and mangled. Like there's bunions, there's hammer toes, there's all the things. And if your toes aren't part of your balance and mobility, then we end up gripping up the chain because now we don't have that structure to create balance. They've actually done a study showing that longevity and toe strength are tied together. Oh. So releasing the toes, which we teach, is one of the ways that we share to people to support turning your system into that proper structure. where we can have 60% of our body weight on our heels. And then if we do, your pelvis is properly aligned, which creates the amount of space you need for the diaphragm to function. And then you've got everything up the chain. As soon as we start tipping, though, we're like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and every single floor in the building becomes impacted negatively as a result.
And those feet, holy moly, can that be painful work? I was actually using the paddle between my toes today.
Nice.
There, just trying to get every direction. But man, I introduced the toe stuff to people, and it's amazing how painful it is. Like the feet are, and it makes sense. I mean, they take everything. That's how we get around. So it's amazing what can be stored in the feet. And I know I've watched a couple of videos. I think Walter from Ireland and his story with releasing the feet, and even when he was working on his dad's feet, it can be quite remarkable. Can you show the block?
Yes, there's two sizes. So we have the Block Buddy and the Block Baby. Now these are made of wood, and the reason is those adhesions, those collagen proteins that migrate, that become adhesions and grip to everything in its path, including bone, they grip to bone. Bone and wood are similar in density. So when we're doing this work, we're not sliding on the tool. We are planted, and I teach people how to slowly shear through the layers. And we stay in position for a minimum of 3 minutes, because this is all about melting. So the combination of pressure over time in an area combined with turning on the diaphragm is like your body's furnace. The muscles of the upper chest is like a space heater. So I live in Winnipeg. I mean, you're a Canadian, you know how cold it can get. It can be minus 35, 40 Celsius here. I can have the most expensive, best of everything inside my space, but if my window breaks and I can't fix it, I will die. That's the purpose of the cell membrane, and learning why the fascia is so critical to support healthy cells, because the container needs to be intact to make sure that everything on the inside is working properly. So we use wood because bone and wood are similar in density, and through the process, we can connect deeply to where those adhesions root, holding us out of alignment with that tremendous force and pressure. Now, the Block Buddy is for people over 5 feet tall. The Block Baby is for people under 5 feet tall. But if you can, having both is beautiful, because there's lots of positions where one might feel more comfortable for you than the other. I also have a lot of double blocking classes. So most people in my community really appreciate having both. The smaller one is easier to travel with. So there's lots of reasons for that. But we literally work head to toe and everything in between. And they're also very specifically shaped so that we can get into these soft, vulnerable places, but melt all the way to the bone. When I started this work with the block, I was using a rectangular wooden block. It was this very beautiful moment when suddenly block therapy came into my existence, but it was a rectangular piece of wood. So as soon as I lied on it, I was like, wow, I don't have to use my hands on my body anymore, but it had sharp edges. So it was limiting to what I could do with it. So spent a couple of years creating the size and shape so that this is really comfortable to go deep. And people think, well, if I'm in pain, I don't want to lie on something hard. But bone and wood really love each other. And once you lie on it, you get this sense of communication. And what's so important from the spiritual perspective is Greg Braden, in his book, The God Code, now he goes into the detail around this, but basically shares that on the surface level of every cell on the fascia is the message divinity lies within. So if we've got trillions of cells, if we have adhesions and scar tissue riddled throughout our body, which most people do, we have all these blockages to those deeper cells. So we're not communicating efficiently with our entire structure. If we only are feeding 10%, I mean, they say we only use 10% of our brain. I believe we're only breathing 10% of our capacity. So if that's the truth, that we're only getting oxygen to about 10, say 20% of our cells in our body, we're missing the communication from the rest of them to teach us really why we're here and what we're capable of and what we can do to thrive in this world.
Yeah. And so when you feel you're like, this is selfish because I have all these questions, like, should it be smooth? Like my jawline is riddled with like these little ropey things and they're getting looser, but holy moly, like Are all your bone surfaces supposed to be smooth? What is it supposed to feel like when you run your hands along bone surfaces?
Well, yeah, it's not supposed to be ropey because wherever there's like ropey or grainy or striated, that's the adhesions building up or dense. Like we don't want dense tissue in soft tissue.
Oh,
We want the tissue to be soft. Like the whole concept of a hard body has really taken us away from being optimally healthy because people are working out to get this hard body, but the more they work out, the stronger they pattern their body out of alignment.
yes.
So we want to be spacious. So the concept of lengthening and strengthening, which is part of yoga, part of Pilates, part of block therapy, those are all the methods of strengthening that make more sense than going into I was the gym head. I could lift a lot of weight, but boy, it compressed and ballooned me because I just created all these adhesions and all these blockages. And if we truly want to be strong, we have to get oxygen into the muscle cell because that's what feeds it. So rather than staying connected into this repetitive muscular contraction where I'm stuck in the groove and I'm only strong where I'm strengthening, I want to recruit more of those muscle cells, and we have to melt the adhesions, get the blood and oxygen into those cells so that they can start to wake up and thrive. So the more we can recruit all of our cells, the stronger we are, and the stronger our breath, we can continue to feed those cells with oxygen instead of running out of fuel, which is what most people deal with when they're exercising.
It's amazing how rough I am. And that's such a short range of motion when you think about some of those things. Like when you have about fluid isometrics and fluid, it just makes me want to think of flowing and long and lengthening and not these short, very specifically located exercise. Like what does just regular bodybuilding for that specific look do to the fascia? Is it like what if they did everything in correct alignment? Is it still causing damage? Is it shortening things because of this short range of motion?
It certainly makes a difference if people are conscious of correct alignment when they're doing it. But yes, that repetitive concentric contraction creates density. They want to get big, hard muscles. We
Right.
don't want anything hard in the body when it's not contracted. Like we should have soft tissue when it's
Right.
relaxed. But people equate that to not not strong or lazy or whatever it is. But I mean, the hard body is not, yeah, it's not the healthy body.
It's
And
not
then the
the
athletes
body.
too, like some of the most challenging cases I work with are the ones that were elite athletes when they were younger because they trained so hard, especially if they're playing a sport with a rotation like tennis or golf, where you're constantly
Oh,
overusing one side than the other, and then it creates so much asymmetry in the body that again, because now that's going to create a tip. Again, adhesions have to build and build so that we don't tip over. And so they can be really challenging bodies to work with. They are the hardest ones. The people that we think are really healthy, these elite athletes when they're younger, they struggle as they get older.
yeah, for sure, for sure. It'd be amazing to find this work right at the beginning of it so that you can counter what
Yeah.
you're doing all the time and keep that body healthy and more symmetrical. So
And
can
that's what
you,
we shared too, because we
oh,
don't want people to not do what they love, but understand what you're doing and how it's impacting you. And then here's something you can do to, as you said, counter those
right,
negative effects. Yeah.
right, absolutely. So I get a little bit into the work and I get a little bit overzealous sometimes. And I'm wondering, can you overdo it? Say you've worked something and it's tender because you've done some releasing. Do you need to leave it a bit of time? Can you go back to it right away? Or what can you overdo with certain area?
There's so many perspectives around that, and absolutely you can. And that's why we always teach you, first of all, your breath is your guide. If you're doing it like one thing, we are teaching you to become a pain seeker. We're not adding pain to your body. We're making you consciously aware of the pain that's deeper than you're physically aware of because we can only handle so much incoming information. So when we start blocking and we start moving into the tissue, the goal is to find the pain because pain equals adhesion. But you're in control of that because you're the one doing the work. You're the one deciding, am I breathing? Like, and there's only two rules. Most importantly, as long as you're breathing in a relaxed way, you are feeding and healing the tissue. If you're doing something that it creates a stressed breath, that's your body saying, this doesn't feel safe. And that's when we need to back off. So That's one of the things. But also, if somebody new is starting this and they, for example, in past have been taking a lot of medications, the liver is going to be really overworked. So as we start moving into the tissue and start to clean out those areas, the toxins get dumped into the bloodstream. So if we're really toxic when we begin, we also have to be aware that healing crises or healing opportunities, I prefer to call them, they can happen. So it's really about starting and navigating based on how you feel. This really teaches you how to become intuitive with what your body needs. And there's a little bit of a learning curve for that, but we have a wonderful community of support to guide people as they begin through the journey. So yes, you can block as long as it feels good for you to do. But over time, you start to really see, okay, this felt good, or maybe that was a little too much. And then we create those understandings with our own body as we go forward. I love blocking areas that are tender though, because to me, if I blocked an area and it's sore the next day, it means I've put inflammation in there, that directed blood flow that went in to repair and rejuvenate. So you've got all this potential energy. So if we can handle it with that conscious breath, then you're actually going to move that energy deeper and deeper and get a more profound result because of that.
Okay. So you can do it again.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fascinating. So I just had something and I just forgot what I was going to say about that. But darn, it was like I should have written it down when something came to me. But anyways, but it's a really good thing to have you. So by the way, guys, there's on Deanna's YouTube channel, there's lots of information on the YouTube channel, lots of free content. But on her site, if you go to blocktherapy.com, lots of different programs that you can buy. The facelifter program that is super fun because we're understanding now that beauty is not just here from the chin or the neck up, right? It's a whole body thing. And in a world where we're freezing and feeling and ignoring the patterning and the connectivity of it all. So I really want to talk about that because beauty is really in the eye of the beholder these days, you know, our ideas of what's beautiful. But I really feel that there's a lot of harm being done these days when you ignore how everything talks to one another. And then you're just cutting and pulling without paying attention to the releasing and the structure and the patterning that put you in that state in the first place. But I also wanted to say is it's really great to have Deanna talking in your ear to remind you to breathe, because I find that I at least naturally don't breathe. And you're like, okay, I'm like, right, breathe. And then just breathe into it, because that's such an important part. And it's so automatic to just kind of hold and focus on what you're doing without the breath work as well. And
yeah. And so from the beauty perspective, it's really about, like I always say, at the age of 56, I don't want to look 25. I want to look like the best version of the 56-year-old that I am. And what that means is doing my best to have each and every cell in correct alignment, to be properly fed and properly clean. Because each cell is just a microcosm of this whole container that we have. So like that balloon, if we take out half the air and then there's all the dust and debris, that's the wrinkled face that has blotchy marks or brown spots, because we're not cleaning out the tissue. So when your cells are fed and clean and there's flow and there's symmetry and balance, that's the best version of beauty that any one of us can have, because what we then have is the ability for the light to shine through. As soon as we have compression or we're putting stuff in our face to lift, whatever that is, now we're blocking space and we're actually going to create more adhesion. And you might appreciate the appearance for the moment, but it's going to start impacting you very negatively down the road, especially when people do it repeatedly. And what's so sad is, like, you've got 20-year-olds now doing this kind of stuff. And it's like, where do you think this is going when you're 40 or 50 or 60, if you get there?
I can't even imagine.
No, because most women did it over 50 in my generation, or 45 or whatever it was. But now we're seeing this whole industry telling us that we should have this appearance that is based on this picture of perfection. But we move in life, you know, like everybody's taking the selfie with the perfect angle and all of these things. Or I'll often say, like, if you're looking at yourself in a mirror wearing high heel shoes, you might think that your legs look better, but if somebody sees you walking, chances are you don't look as graceful, because try balancing on that, right? So same with the face. When we start talking, if we have Sculptra or Botox or whatever, and we now don't have movement, that's not a natural look. And intuitively, we know what beauty is. It's health. And if your cells are healthy, you're beautiful.
Right.
If your cells aren't healthy, then you're going to struggle with your appearance because you don't have that shine, you don't have that glow. And again, you've got grips and hang and the wrinkles and all the things that add up over time. But we can also undo that.
Absolutely. And I just can't, I'm just thinking if they go and cut and get the result that they want, but they still have the bad posture. They still have the same breath. They still have the same patterning. They still favor one side over another.
Yeah.
And also, what I also wonder is because everything is so connected, if something's not moving like it should, it must have an impact elsewhere in the body, right? Like it's all, it all.
Everything is connected. Absolutely. And also, if we can't move our, like, emotions come out naturally, you know, like how we're feeling, like it's in the expressions, it's the smile, it's the look of fear, like all the different things. If we can't move, we can't feel. Like that's another piece to it. And then also, like, I know that when people were talking about with the masks with COVID, one of the really destructive things about that was that babies learn through facial expressions. So for the parent that had a mask over their face and you can't see this movement, it impacted their ability to learn. So there's so many pieces that we don't even, I think, really have a deep understanding of how those things negatively can impact us.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is, and it's these subtle little fundamental basics. And just think about that baby that grew up, and now how's that going to impact its own brain formation, emotional health, because it didn't get those cues of safety and love and whatever
Yes.
from the mother, right? It's wow, huge. Okay, so rib release. So let's talk about sometimes feeling a little bit more uncomfortable before we get comfortable.
Yeah, and rib releases, I would say, happen to probably somewhere between 10 and 20% of the people that block.
Oh,
so what happens with the rib cage? If the rib cage is properly aligned, like a well-made deck, there's space between each rib. But from the lifetime of collapsing, the ribs lose that space and then they freeze together. So when we start blocking, we put this positive energy into the body. Sometimes there's enough energy that a rib will go poof. Sometimes you hear it, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you feel something in the moment, sometimes it's later, because what happens as soon as you release, the body starts inflaming to rebuild and repair the tissue that had been blocked. Adding that extra inflammation creates more pressure to an already vulnerable area. So rib releases can be painful because, unlike your foot, like if you sprain your ankle, you can put it up over there and you can, it still hurts to walk on, but you can kind of forget about it for a while. But with the ribs, laughing, coughing, moving, breathing, like it all hurts. So we have a protocol to get people through it quickly. But for the people that have had it, on the other side of it, now you have more rotation, you have a deeper connection to your breath. So there's always so many amazing gifts from the rib release. And that's only one of the many healing crises. I mean, like ultimately, we disrupt this container, we start pushing out the old, and we're going to feel it on the way out. So it's always a wonderful thing when people have a healing opportunity, because as much as it doesn't feel great in the moment, it's your body finally has enough energy to move out what doesn't serve it any longer, so that we can start really getting into that repair mode. And then once you've rested and you're on the other side of it, you've come to a new place.
So what kind of other examples would you say would be the healing opportunities that people have expressed?
So it can be, say, mucus production, or having a fever, or a change in pain as your body starts shifting. It can be emotional release. So suddenly you might want to bawl your eyes out all day, even though you haven't had anything that's really sad happen in the moment, or you're angry. It can have memories coming to the surface. Anything like that, like skin rashes, stuff moving through that was trapped and creating stagnancy and acidity in the body, it starts moving out. So pretty much anything that doesn't feel good, in my view, is a healing opportunity when you're doing this work.
Right there. And yeah, I can see that. I also had some kind of funny rash show up. I'm not sure what that was from exactly, but it happened at the same time. So there's a little bit of discomfort for a while there, but people are still feeling so sorry for me. I'm like, no, it's temporary. This is great. I will so much more appreciate not being in pain once this has calmed down, and I'll be all the better for it. So I actually welcome that kind of stuff.
Well, and we should, because at the end of the day, most people are in some sort of pain anyway. So this is intentional pain as opposed to unconscious pain, driven from, gravity and negative patterning and all the things that we don't really pay attention to until we do.
Yeah.
So when you're doing this work and you're taught how to consciously move into pain in your body, it becomes a really beautiful sensation because the pressure fibers in the body are larger than the pain fibers. So, and again, you're in control. Nobody's doing this to you. You're choosing this. And we always remind you your breath is your guide. So as soon as you get into a position and you're on that tool and you start connecting to your breath, those pressure fibers kick in. So most people explain it being like suddenly it feels like a good pain or an itch you couldn't scratch. And then we teach people to be intentional about finding pain because pain equals adhesion. So we want to find the adhesions in the body. We want to spend time with it, melt through, send new blood into that space so the cells take the oxygen and they start plumping up and thriving. And then we can go deeper, deeper, deeper. So we can continue to restore areas of the body that had been previously blocked from life.
Right. And what I love this is it is very personal and you get to look for your own pain. And because one thing that you repeatedly say is don't worry about getting the exact right spot. Right? You're in the area, you're trying to find your pain. Your pain is going to be different than my pain. And our exploration is going to be different because it's your body.
Yes.
So, and I really I love that because I can just sit there sometimes and I can stick this on my chin and I could just work it. Well, sometimes I'm just talking to someone and they'll look at me like, well, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyways. But I like stacking things and doing things more than one thing at a time. Because holy moly, this chin, I can't undo it. I got this one. It's so stuck and it just will not release.
One of the best things for that is the tongue decompression technique. I've got a ton of videos on my YouTube channel as well as in my programs teaching people how to bring balance and symmetry into the jaw. And so most people, they think they have a double chin, they have a displaced weak tongue. And it's not, again, like nothing moves in linearly in nature. Everything moves in waves and spirals. So we literally wind and grip and wind and grip. And that's why we feel so much tremendous tension under here. As we are aging this way, those adhesions will grip to everything to stop us from tipping. And that's why people get a jowl, is because that structural protein binds and grips and adheres to bone, leaving the elastin under gravity's will. So we get the jowl or we get the sag or whatever it is. But by releasing those adhesions, we start to bring that balance of collagen and elastin back so that we get the structure as well as the fluidity. We don't want hard tissue. We want tissue that's fluid and mobile. And that's why we don't want to do things like Botox or,
right.
other things, because then we just become this hard plastic looking container.
Right. And then over time, with things not moving, you're going to have your bones they need the pressure to maintain bone density and to maintain their shape, right? It totally changes the facial structure. But I'm glad you mentioned the tongue decompression because you were saying in one video that you were blown away by what's happened with that. So can you tell me what are you specifically noticing from your own practice of the tongue decompression?
So I've been doing it, I would say, at a minimum 6 days a week. Pretty much every day I'll do this when I'm in the tub. Because I had 2 molars removed. I've got all my wisdom teeth, but I had 2 molars removed. And if you leave things, that space is going to get filled in. So knowing what I understand, I do the work to maintain the space. So that was the reason that I started doing this daily. As well, this whole section here, this displaced tongue, we've got our carotid arteries going up through here, the main artery supplying everything. And we also have the major lymphatic drainage sites here. So if we're all bound up in through here, we're not getting fed or clean. Your skin, your eyes, your hair, your brain, all of it. So what was fascinating was about 3 months after I started doing this daily, I had a crack in my lip here. Now, I have the fullest lips I've ever had in my life now.
Wow.
I never had great lips. When I was younger, I used to get cold sores. I haven't had a cold sore for about, 8, 9 years or whatever it's been from the work. But my lips, I was the little girl. Little girls are to be seen and not heard. So, all of that holding back expression, that's one thing. I also had a major surgery on the inside of my mouth when I was a kid. So that scar tissue. I also had chronic nosebleeds as a kid, so always on the left side. So I would push my face and I would create all this asymmetry in my face. So suddenly now I have this crack in my lip and like for, I don't know, it was weeks, but every time I would smile, it would bleed. It was uncomfortable, but I knew it was rebuilding. And then
Oh,
I
so
had
that was the
other,
healing that appeared after doing that.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that was really amazing. Also, the whole shape of my jaw has changed. It's become, if you look at people how they age, typically they start with a more broad face and then we end up getting narrow and long face. That's that aged face. So my face is broader now. It's more square. Because I've put the space back in correctly. You see in a lot of people, the temples collapse. These temple bones, they move in. And then again, that's going to create issues with vision as well as put immense pressure inside. So now you don't have as much room for your brain. So when we have the skull being properly aligned, we have optimal space for all of the structures in through here, including vision. I mean, your eyes are a ball and socket joint, basically. And if we're patterned like this all the time, where you're always tilting one head over to one side, the eyes will pattern. And then I'm not taking my eyes in full ranges of motion. So then I might start getting a hooded eye because now not moving my eyes over here, it's creating weak muscles. So then somebody goes and they do some surgery to try to lift that up, but it's not that. It's kind of like the facelift, as you said, right? Like as
Yeah.
soon as we start pulling things back, it's actually going to show those asymmetries even more under the surface. So ultimately, what we want to do is we want to have optimal flow to every single cell, and that creates function. It creates your best version of how you should be appearing to the world through that lens of space, because then people see your light, you reflect that to them, you feel good about yourself, people see that, and then that just becomes one of those things that you attract more of.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing work. I'm really glad that you brought this to the world, Deanna. It's just, and it's amazing how something can be so painful, even with a rolled up towel. So that's what Deanna recommends if you don't have block to you have it, you can tightly roll up a towel. And it's amazing, like the IT bands or just different
Yeah.
areas that just it's amazing how painful that can be. But what's really cool is being your own witness to it not hurting so much over time.
Yeah.
Things moving.
Yeah.
And I have to say, when I was doing the eye work a little while ago with this, I think I went a little hard. My husband came on me, looks at me, he's like, "What the heck?" You had said to not do it in the morning, which was a good thing. And so quickly before we go, I want people to know where to find you. But that's another thing I think that you break the myth of is how we think we have to be so gentle around this eye area because it's
Yeah.
thin skin. But is it really?
No, no. I think a lot of that is the industry because now you can spend a lot more money on eye cream. What's happening is because we've got this ball and socket joint with the eyes, the collagen will fall down on the underside of the bone and grip. So now, again, that structural protein, it's sunk. So now you have this elastic tissue only, kind of like the jowl hanging. And it feels thinner, but it's because it's lacking the collagen, because it's migrated. So when we get and we work in the eye and we feel the pain deep in there, you're connecting to adhesion so you can pull it back up into the equation. And then, I mean, skin is skin. There's
Right.
no area where it's less strong. That's
Right.
a myth.
Right. And I think people have, we've been really told we're going to stretch the skin, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but it's resilient, right? It
Yeah.
just, we need to make sure. And lastly, we're also activating specific cells that are causing the creation of hyaluronic acid and collagen.
Yep.
Not when we're doing this.
Yep. The fasciocytes, the osteoblasts, the fibroblasts, pressure over time creates activity. So, and we're not sliding, right? Like we're planted. We're very slowly moving. So we're melting. We're looking for adhesions because they grip to bone. We want to release them from the bone. So when we spend that time there with breath, we're releasing what's blocking flow to the skin so that we can support getting oxygen to the skin. If you've got all these adhesions and you're using the best skin creams, that's not going to penetrate and do anything to change your appearance. We need to get blood flow. into the cells in order for them to be healthy. And that's what we have to do, is find those adhesions, because the adhesions block blood flow. And when we find it and connect breath, then we're actively moving life into those spaces previously blocked. So again, those cells can plump up. We want those full blown up balloons as our cells. We don't want them deflated, because that's ultimately what aging is. But we can, again, even if you're starting from that perspective, that can be reversed.
So, and I just love that, because you're releasing, but also activating your own body's healing capacity all at once, which I love, because the body is regenerative. It can heal. And we're so often looking outside of ourselves rather than activating what we can do from within. So folks, if you want to find, I gotta go, unfortunately we gotta go, but if you want, there's going to be links to give you access to Deanna's programs on her site. But Deanna, what is the best way that people can find you and your information?
Blocktherapy.com is my website, and I'm on all of the social media channels. If you just go to Block Therapy, you'll find us. Again, tons and tons of free information on YouTube. But I also believe we have a free gift for you. Yes, where it's using a rolled up towel. It's a 9-part series teaching people the work, so you can get a really good feel for it. And if it resonates with you with a towel, then the next step would be the program. So that's a great place to start, because it's $9, or sorry, it's free. It's free for you and your community. It's a free gift we're giving you. So you can start right away and feel. And the rolled up towel is really efficient actually at putting that pressure into the body and teaching people how the work is.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'd say if you think that's painful, people would. But, and the paddle, like, honestly, I show this to people and it's amazing how beautiful, like when I got it, they're beautiful. They're not just a tool. It's like, I was really quite taken aback by this beautiful piece of wood when I got it. So,
well, we have our own factory in Winnipeg here, and we use the reclaimed elm trees, the trees that are getting cut down anyways because of Dutch elm disease, the diseases in the bark. These beautiful 100-year-old trees, they used to just put them in a chipper and they would go to waste. Now, this beautiful couple created urban lumber, so we get our wood from them. So we're bringing life back to trees that, you know, were so beautiful but got cut down, and now they're helping heal the masses.
That's amazing. What a beautiful end to this story. Okay, you hold on. Okay, guys, I know you're going to love this. You're going to love her work. If you haven't been introduced to the work of Deanna and her in the block therapy, you're going to love it. So check it out. Share this around. We need to release the fascia if we really want to achieve the health that resides within body and mind. And this is such a great way that you can add into your daily life. I mean, you could spend all the time on it you want, but you can also stack different parts of this work into your day and just be sitting there as you're listening to this, right? And just working with the block or working with the paddle and releasing, or working. We didn't even get into talking about the webbing in between the fingers and the toes. It's such a big thing, but look into that, because that's a really important part of the work, releasing between, we did talk about the toes, but also in between the fingers. So thank you, Deanna, I really appreciate your time today. And guys, until next time, be well and please share. I hope you enjoyed it. Ciao for now.
Bye, everyone.